Welcome to TXOGA Talks, where energy meets insight. The purpose of this podcast is to provide you with a candid conversation about our energy needs, our energy security, and your energy future. Texas oil and natural gas have made our nation the world's energy leader, constantly innovating and investing to fuel the economy, protect the environment, and power the world. This industry is fast-paced, high-tech, and essential to improving modern life. And we're here to talk about it. You're listening to TXOGA Talks, where energy meets insight. And welcome back to another episode of TXOGA Talks, where energy meets insight. I'm certainly glad to be joined again today by Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs at the Texas Oil and Gas Association, Shana Joyce.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
This has been fun, having these conversations about Texas oil and gas, and just what makes our state unique.
That's right. And today, I think we're going to be diving into a kind of virtual road trip today.
And I'm kind of excited about that because we're going to be talking about museums and destinations across Texas. We're going to be talking with a new host of TCR, Texas Country Reporter, Jay B Sauceda, and so it'll be a lot of fun.
Yes, I call shotgun today.
Do you know where that term originated?
Ooh, no, tell me.
Well,
I'm actually really interested in this.
It goes back to the day of stagecoaches when somebody literally rode shotgun along with the driver to make certain that things went well.
Protection.
You had a good view, you had a good look for everything, so it's a little known fact.
I like that. That's some extra content for today.
Well, we have a lot of content to cover today because we're going to be discussing and giving a brief overview, first of all, of oil and gas production, how it all began.
Yeah, so we have from 4Ps episode. We've done a deep dive into a couple, and we've done an overview on an episode before, which you can go back and check out. But oil and gas production starts in the areas where you can find the minerals: Permian Basin, Eagle Ford, Barnett Shale, and from there it's extracted from the ground and shipped through pipelines that are scattered across the state.
And because of those pipelines, if you drive a car or you like transportation modes other than your 2 feet or your favorite horse, you rely on gasoline. And gasoline is actually made available to convenience stores all across Texas because these pipelines go to terminals, and that's where the gasoline is collected by trucks, and then they're taken to those convenience stores. Or back when I grew up, it was the old gas station that you would go to. And that's how modern life is made possible today.
And it's pretty amazing that we have, as we talk about all the time, just this wonderful resource for our state that does so much in terms of providing the fuel that we need, but also providing jobs and energy security for America.
And it really is all tied to infrastructure. One of my favorite stories is about here in Austin, where Austin Bergstrom Airport is a busy airport, and it requires tremendous amounts of jet fuel to move people and goods all across the world. And because of Flint Hills Resources built a pipeline from their terminal where trucks were picking up the fuel, they built a pipeline and removed about 100 trucks per day. And if you've driven in Austin, you know that's a pretty big deal.
That is an extra bonus. And, our airport is growing, so we do need that extra fuel for our growing city. So it all is for the positive.
That's right.
Sure.
We're talking about road trips today a little bit. I think that's a theme. When I think about road trips, Shana, I think about what kind of snacks are we going to pack?
That's right. You got to stop at your Buc-ee's.
You do.
You got to get your Buc-ee nuggets, right?
Yep.
My family loves Buc-ee sour balls.
There you go.
We like those. But me personally, I'm going to need some Doritos and probably some corn nuts. Ranch, please. What about you,
those
sir?
Those are all good. You always have to have some peanut M&Ms in there. And
ooh.
Janet, my wife, is so health conscious. She packs some carrots, baby carrots, and other things. And so it's one baby carrot, 2 M&Ms, one baby carrot, 3 M&Ms, and it makes for a fun road trip.
I'm glad she gives balance in your life.
She does. She brings it all around, and we're excited to be talking about these places that you and your families can visit as soon as we get back from this break.
Yeah, so stay tuned. This episode of TXOGA Talks is brought to you by Devon Energy, Repsol, and Targa Resources. So, in Texas, it gets hot during the summer. And so you have to think of some alternative things to do with I have small children. So I think
You're thinking about this a lot.
Yes, I'm thinking about splash pads. I'm thinking about pools, but I'm also thinking about museums because there's a lot of really good AC in a museum.
That's right.
On top of everything else that they have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted today to talk a little bit about all the fascinating museums that are spread across the state that kind of have some highlights of oil and gas.
You mentioned kids and museums, and you might think, well, they're not going to enjoy that. But I've got to tell you, in the 4th grade, my mother carried us through the National Mall in Washington, D.C. We went through all the Smithsonian museums, and it really opened my eyes to the understanding of our country's formation. It captured moments in the history of our nation that still reside with me today. So I think it's a fabulous thing to do. And we have a lot of oil and gas museums that I think we can talk about today and give you some ideas. I've been able to go through some of these, and I'm kind of excited about it.
Yes. So let's start right here in Austin. So in Austin, we have the Bullock, Texas State History Museum. That is obviously more than oil and gas, but they have an amazing oil and gas exhibit.
They do. It's on the 3rd floor. It tells the history of Texas, and the oil and gas history and the history of Texas are so intertwined. And we think it's so important here at the Texas Oil and Gas Association. We sponsored a contest where we asked elementary schools to submit a contest, participate in a contest, and submit information. And we had a couple of winners, and it was fun. We actually met those winners here at the Bob Bullock Museum, and those kids were just fantastic. It was the Dora Romero Elementary School and the St. Mary's Catholic School. They came here, the teachers, their sponsors, some of the parents came, and they had a great time.
It was really nice to meet them after kind of looking through their submissions on how oil and gas is part of their everyday life. But to meet them in person, to see how excited they were, and to see them start exploring the exhibit that we have here in Austin.
So if you haven't visited the Bob Bullock Texas State History Museum, you need to make that top of your list. And Shana, there are many other museums that capture the history of oil and gas in our state. And I think we'll just go through some of those today. Let's walk through some of them. I've picked out a few here that I wanted to visit with you about.
Okay.
Southeast Texas in Beaumont, there's the Texas Energy Museum, where visitors there can explore a fascinating world of petroleum science and technology. They talk about the geological formations of oil to modern day refining chemistry, which I had one roommate in college that loved chemistry so much he took it twice. And it's an important part of telling the story. In Chambers County, just next to Beaumont there's the Children's Museum in Mount Bellevue, and they have an oil and gas, natural gas park at its center that tells the story of oil and natural gas from location to extraction to refining to transportation and then the final products. And actually, we have a state senator whose wife, Macy Middleton, was very instrumental in getting that museum going. And that's how a lot of these museums came about, is Texans believe in the history and heritage so much that they've invested in it, and they've given others a chance to do the same. One more, and I want to hear some of your favorites. And also in Beaumont, you've heard of Spindletop, right?
Yeah.
Spindletop.
What was that first historic?
It wasn't the first one, but it was one that made the news.
Got it.
It put Texas on the map. Spindletop Gladys City Boomtown Museum. How about that?
That sounds fun.
Which recreates early 20th century oil boomtown. Can you imagine the hustle and bustle and what was going on?
I'm adding that to my list.
You need to. It gives visitors a glimpse into the past when oil was first transformed in Texas.
I love that. I'm going to take you to the coast.
Okay.
So let's go to Galveston. I love the coast. Let's go to Galveston, where they have the Ocean Star Museum and Education Center, which is actually a retired offshore rig.
Oh, wow.
And I am adding this one to my list because this looks awesome. And so it was an operating rig in the Gulf of Mexico from 1969 to 1984, and it drilled over 200 wells during that time frame.
That's amazing they could capture that.
I know, and made it a museum.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely adding that one. Now, one I just recently visited, actually, I went down to Corpus to visit my in-laws and took the family, and we went to the Corpus Christi Museum of Science and History. And so they have a really cool geology hall where it has a lot of rock formations and things like that. It also has a entire scale model of the Southwestern refinery, now Flint Hills, that used to be used by engineers before computers. But what was an extra bonus was that it was Valero's STEM Day by the Bay.
Oh, wow.
So I took the kids and we went and we made ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
We made slime.
That'll kind of stick with you.
It was very sticky afterwards. But we also made these very cool flashlights.
So your kids made this?
My kids made these, and they had volunteers from local robotics teams. Schools have robotics teams now.
Mm-hmm.
We have one at my son's school. And so they teach kids about, it's a STEM, activity, but you're building robots. And so these wonderful kids helped younger children build these awesome flashlights. So it's a popsicle stick. It's got some copper tape, a little light, a battery, and a binder clip.
And does it work?
It does work. We're going to show you later.
Okay.
It's a little finicky, but it was just cool. And even my 2-year-old worked on making it with Dad. So it was really awesome. What a great day to have in our communities. Absolutely.
Yeah, those will be lasting memories for families. And that's what you can experience when you learn about the history and heritage of the Lone Star State. There's a museum in Houston that's pretty awesome. It's the Museum of Natural Sciences.
Okay.
And it is absolutely fantastic. It's home to the Weiss Energy Hall. It has multiple exhibits on Texas oil and natural gas industry, including the EFX 3000 that offers a thrilling ride into Texas shale oil and gas drilling country, complete with a microscopic journey into a hydraulic microfracture. Think about that.
Oh, I think I have to see it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you could spend a lot of time there because it's just fantastic. It really, truly is a gem.
Now let's go to West Texas. We talk about the Permian Basin a lot. So if you're in the Permian Basin or Panhandle region, you can visit the Permian Basin Petroleum Museum in Midland.
And I've been there, and it is well worth seeing. It offers a tremendous amount.
And then if we go to East Texas, you're part of the world, we can go to Kilgore to the East Texas Oil Museum. Have you been there?
I have been, and it's a great story of Texas.
And they have a boom town there, and it's a full-scale town, kind of like the other museum that we talked about too. So you have some areas. We know Texas is a big state.
and before we stop, I want to mention a couple of others because these are on my list that I've driven by.
Okay.
I've seen the Perot Museum of Natural and Perot Museum of Nature and Science in Dallas actually being built.
Yes, and I haven't checked it out, but I hear great things about it.
Yeah, it really is. It houses the Reese Jones Foundation Dynamic Earth Hall and the Tom Hunt Energy Hall. When you can turn valves of full-size wellhead, you can see 3D technologies that map likely underground energy deposits.
Wow.
It's cool stuff.
That's really cool.
But when you get through in Dallas, you need to go to Fort Worth.
Got it.
Because Fort Worth, you don't want to miss the Energy Blast exhibit at the Fort Worth Museum of Science and History. It's designed to engage students of all ages with dynamic learning experience that combines hands-on activities and immersive displays about the Barnett Shale. And the Barnett Shale is where hydraulic fracturing was combined with horizontal drilling that ushered in the shale era, and this revolutionized the world and made the United States literally the safety of the world by making natural gas available all over the country.
And the Barnett Shale is up in that area.
It is. It's in North Texas.
That's right.
Yeah, Fort Worth and goes a little west from there.
Well, I've got some bucket list places to add to take the boys, and so we hope that you'll check out these on your road trips across Texas.
These museums are not only educational, but they are fun, and you can make it that way. There's a lot of other things besides oil and gas that you learn about, and I would encourage you to make it a part of your family experiences.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be joined by our guest, the new Texas country reporter, Jay B Sauceda.
Hi, I'm Neil Carlton, president of the TXOGA Insurance Agency. The TXOGA Insurance Agency is pleased to sponsor today's episode of the TXOGA Talks podcast. TXOGA members have access to the TXOGA Safety Group with Texas Mutual and get a premium discount of 12.4%, as well as the possibility to earn 2 dividends. Participants also have access to unique safety tools to keep their team safe and on the job. Visit TXOGAinsurance.com for more information.
And we're back, and we're thrilled today to be joined by Jay B Sauceda. JB is a well-known chronicler of Texas stories and history. He has a multimedia presence across the state, and he's recently been announced as the anchor for Texas Country Reporter. And I'm kind of excited about that because Texas Country Reporter has been around Texas for almost 50 years now. And JB, we can't wait to visit with you today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a little nostalgic today because when I was a state FFA officer in Texas, Texas Country Reporter, we all were gravitated to because it was literally telling the story of the Lone Star State. And man, we have great stories to tell, don't we?
It's unbelievable. I mean, you drive 5 seconds, you run into somebody pretty incredible, and drive another 5 seconds and somebody else, and they know each other. I mean, the way that the people and the stories in the state weave together is just something that's unmatched anywhere else.
You have pretty big shoes to fill with Bob Phillips.
What's funny is
50 years is a long time to do anything.
Yeah,
right?
I've been getting the question of, am I going to do it for 50 years? And he got started a little younger than me. He was 18 when he started.
He was 18.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah. I'm 39, so okay. I mean, I'll be pretty old.
Yeah, you got to go 51. You can't just match it.
Yeah,
you gotta exceed it, right?
Yeah,
there you go, set high.
Yeah, hopefully I'll still be limber enough to get in and out of the vehicle by then.
Well, tell us maybe what's influenced you and drew you to this position to get us started here about this.
You know, I've always been a pretty curious person, and my dad is one of these guys that anywhere you go, he's kind of off introducing himself, talking to somebody, kind of getting to know some stranger, and that has certainly rubbed off on me. And so, over the years, I've had a litany of different jobs, but I think the one that I look back on the most with most fondness was my time as a commercial photographer. And people would hire me to, all kinds of magazines and newspapers from around the world would hire me to go photograph the state. And, it felt like a dream to get paid to drive around Texas, go on road trips that someone else was covering, and, meet these just crazy, interesting people, and I mean crazy in a good way. I mean, it was just the most random people that you would ever think to run into. And so I'm just, I've heard two things repeatedly, which is I've got big shoes to fill, which I completely agree. And this has got to be a dream job. And I couldn't wholeheartedly agree with both statements.
We talk a lot of the point of this podcast is to really talk about oil and gas and to talk about what our companies do and the wide breadth that they, spread across our state. So, are you interested in going out into the fields where oil and gas is produced? And have you had some stories already with some people that live maybe in the Permian Basin or in the Eagle Ford? And what stories have you heard, or what are you excited to tell? That's kind of like a 2-point question there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. TCR's premise in a lot of ways is, or really not a lot of ways, the way is to tell the stories of ordinary Texans doing extraordinary things. And that's everybody. I mean, that's everybody from, the cook at the restaurant that feeds people, every day during lunch, close to the chemical plants and refineries close to where I grew up, to the truck drivers moving goods between warehouses, I'll tell you, this weekend I ran into a guy who's a grave digger in Ballinger, Texas.
Wow.
And I talked to him, it wasn't even for TCR. I was just having a conversation with him. I was actually asking him his opinion on whether my wife and I should get another dog. And
what was the answer?
He unfortunately agreed with my wife. In part because he said, we've only got one life to live. And there's nobody who understands that better than a grave digger, that's experiencing these kinds of stories and stuff. And so that's what I love about TCR is that, the show inherently believes that everyone's got a story to tell. And, and I think that the oil industry and Texas go hand in hand in a lot of ways. And, there's one story in particular I'm excited about that we've already been kind of chasing down about a channel pilot in Houston. And, I grew up right there on the Gulf Coast, and this gentleman I've actually known for a while, and I've wanted to tell his story. And his job is to help these huge boats come in and out of one of the biggest, most, busiest ports that we have in the country. And so those are the stories that we really love. And I think we're undoubtedly going to tell a lot of stories that people are going to be excited about, and hopefully uncover some jobs and responsibilities people have around the state that other people just aren't even aware exist.
I think that's right, because if you travel our state, you're in Dallas, you're in San Antonio, or you may be in San Angelo and Abilene. That's a long way from the Texas coast. And so there's a huge economy all into itself. It's just like going to the valley and the Rio Grande border. Enormous economic activity that most parts of Texas just really doesn't even think about. JB, in this new role at Texas Country Reporter, which I still think a full country reporter, it shows you how old I am and what I grew up doing. But you bring a unique perspective all its own. You've written a book that delves into the unique perspectives of Texas. Tell us the title of your book.
It's called "Y'all Need This Book: The Definitive Guide to Being Texan." And
there you go.
I
love it.
And it is true.
Definitive Guide to Being a Texan.
Yeah, and it is true. Y'all all do need this book. You can get it for the low price of $20. I love a great story. I think that I've always also just believed that when you come over and you visit someone for dinner, you bring a snack, you bring a drink, something like that, but you also bring stories, right? You want to enrich the experiences of the people around you. And I've always enjoyed being able to go out in the world and bring back stories, interesting things. I don't want to just talk about myself. I want to talk about people that I find really interesting. And, and I found that some of the most mundane experiences are where you can find some of the deepest, stories and learning lessons. And so, I think that it's going to be a really fun experience to get to go out and do that more regularly, kind of go back to some things that I got to do in my early career. And, I had a company, my wife and I had a really great logistics business based here in Central Texas for a long time. We loved that. And, we had the experience of getting to tell the stories of a lot of the brands and clients that we had. But I was getting a little antsy sitting behind a desk every day, and I'm excited to be able to get out in the world again and go chat with people all over the state.
Well, there's only 254 counties, and so you've got some ground to cover. For sure.
I've got a little bit of work to do. Yeah, Bob's a little further ahead of me on crossing off, having visited each of those counties. I'm pretty sure the show has covered. Actually, I know for sure the show has covered a story in every single county, which is pretty wild.
It's hard to do.
Now, you're sitting next to someone who has been to the 254 counties, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And it's a lot easier to say you're going to do it than to actually do it, but it's amazing. And every part of Texas is unique. It's special. It's full of people that really have shaped the history of our state, but are shaping its future as well. And so it's fun. I think you'll have a blast, and we look forward to listening in.
That's great.
Yeah.
So speaking of, what are some places that are on your bucket list to cover in your new role?
I've told people this. I did a big project. I flew all the way around the state of Texas. It took about 6 days, 36 flight hours in a small 4-seater Cessna back in 2015. And, I think when people think about picturesque scenes and, where can I go that's going to have this really immense beauty, a lot of people immediately gravitate towards like West Texas, which I love. I spent a lot of time in the Big Bend region. But of all places that I really loved flying over, I loved the Panhandle. It's way more of a diverse geography than most people think. If you got Paladura Canyon,
That's what I was thinking.
And even
Canyon's
just the landscapes of all the farming activity, so one of my favorite places to land was actually Andrews. I landed in Andrews and spent some time there. And so I want to go spend a lot more time up in the Panhandle. I want to spend a lot more time in the Rio Grande Valley. I've got a lot of family down there. And then, of course, it'll just mean a lot for me to go spend a lot of time on the Gulf Coast where I grew up and really, show the beauty of that part of the state to the rest of the state.
At the Texas Oil and Gas Association, we kind of think that oil and gas is the foundation of our state's economy. It's been a big part of building and growing the job opportunities for Texas. In one sense, it's pretty simple, but in another sense, it's kind of complex. I wonder how that storytelling fits into where you're going and how you might incorporate the story of oil and gas and all the things that you'll be doing.
Yeah, look, I think it's undeniable that oil and gas plays a huge role in the economy. I mean, I think about some of the towns that when my wife and I first started dating and the Eagleford play was just starting to really develop, as you drove between here and Mission and McAllen, Texas, there was activity there, but it wasn't quite as busy as you see things now. And you drive through places like George West and Three Rivers, and you've just got an unbelievable amount of activity that's really, fun to see. I've got friends of mine that I grew up with in LaPorte that now live in places like that,
Mm-hmm.
and so, I think it's inevitable. Our objective is, we always start with the people, right? Like some travel shows, their big focus is we're going to go to this place and we're going to tell you about that place. Our whole objective is we're going to go tell you about the people, and we look for really great stories. Even when it's about a town or it's about a restaurant, we want to know who's the person who's been working there. What is it that they've been doing? What's something that we can learn from them? And yeah, I think it'd be really hard for us to not tell a story about oil and gas in some capacity in the state because of that. I think even people whose primary job is farming, they probably have some great mineral rights. They've got, some sort of connection to the business. And yeah, we're excited to be able to tell those stories.
We like to say you don't have to live in the middle of the oil patch to benefit from
Mm-hmm.
oil and gas in Texas, because it literally does pay for the roads that you'll be traveling on, and conducting these interviews with people from our universities to our public schools to our first responders. And we're real proud of the role that it plays in our state.
Absolutely. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you today was about, you're talking a lot about the people that you meet, which I think is really wonderful, because we talk about the men and women of the oil and gas community. And so what is, from your travels, is there a particular highlight of a story that kind of shows the spirit and resiliency of Texas?
I met with a guy about, it was probably a month and a half ago, who talked about, he's got this really great business. He was living up in Dallas. He was seeing some challenges he had a landscape business, and he was planting a lot of grass, and we'd have a hot summer and the grass wasn't doing so well. And then he'd drive by this field and see this, these fields with all this just crazy amount of greenery and beautiful colors and stuff. And he put two and two together that it was all this native grass. And so he started this business that basically he'd fly around in a plane, gas it up, fly around, and he'd find these swaths of bluebonnets and all these native, grasses and foliage. And basically would go onto the property, talk to the landowner and say, hey, can I come get the seed from this? And now he's got this incredible business based out in Junction where they farm all this native prairie land. And basically, so I'm asking him, I was like, that's a hard business. You're going out and finding this stuff. It's great. I mean, he's helping try to return horny toads and all these different, animals and creatures that sort of depend on this stuff. And, he said, we've got businesses trying to figure out how to do this, and this is our job. And I said, well, why do you do this? And I said, this is not easy. And he said, I want to be a really great ancestor. And I said, okay. And he said, I think about, like, how can I help just like leave a little bit of something good behind for people? And I think that that's a story that resonates with a lot of people, right? There are a lot of business owners, there are a lot of parents, there are a lot of, community leaders that really just want to leave a legacy behind in whatever way that they're doing it. This man's mission is to do that through, seed and helping people, plant these prairie lands that had been here for, a million years. And there are people, excuse me, like myself, my wife and I, that were building a business that wanted to do that, to leave a legacy, for our children. And, and that's really what's important to us at TCR, is highlighting that in whatever way people do that. And I think that, there are a lot of these examples around the state of people who have taken their fortune, whether that's wealth financially or knowledge, and they want to bestow that and pass that forward to people forward. And that's what TCR is all about, highlighting, So my hope is to get to do that every single day.
Well, we're excited about you doing that. There's never going to be a shortage of material in the Lone Star State.
No.
The history that we have, the heritage, the growth that we have. the native grasses that you've been talking about is awesome, because I know a lot of pipeline right-of-ways companies will purchase materials just like that and reintroduce it. So it's good to know the background of someone that makes that available to continue to make Texas
I was
look
thinking
good.
about that same program that some of our companies use, because I love that that's a restoration project part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
He actually, this is something he said. He said that some of his biggest customers are basically the organizations that have large land rights that are just trying to figure out. I mean, he was like, wouldn't you like to have a lawn that you never have to mow? He's like, we're over here planting grasses that are not native to the state, and we're having to constantly maintain. Why don't we just plant it back to the stuff that had been here forever, you know? And so he shared that. He said, yeah, we've got some oil companies that are using it. We've got a lot of municipalities that have found that that's easier maintenance, and it's also just beautiful, you know? And so it's really incredible seeing these kinds of partnerships develop, you know?
That's good.
That's amazing.
Well, tell us one more time the name of your book.
Y'all need this book, The Definitive Guide to Being Texan.
That's good.
And I also actually, for those that are more of a picture book person,
I like pictures. Very few words.
Yeah.
If
If reading's not your specialty, I've got a book called A Mile Above Texas, which is about that flight that I did around the state.
Cool.
Okay.
And it's got about 180 images of the 44,000 that I photographed from the plane.
Wow.
And there's a ton of the Permian Basin that you can see when I flew all over that area. And
tell us the name of that again.
A Mile Above Texas.
A Mile Above.
Yeah.
But a quick question about that: were you flying and taking pictures at the same time?
Yeah. So as it turns out, a plane is all about balance, and once you kind of get it configured in balance the right way, it'll keep flying for the most part until you run out of gas in the same direction and same altitude. So it's actually a lot easier than most people think to take your hands off.
Autopilot's a good thing too, right?
It has autopilot too.
There
So
you go.
you hit autopilot, it's going to keep you moving in the same direction. You can stick the camera out for a second, and then also had some GoPros and that sort of deal too.
Good.
That'd be a big no. As Todd knows, that would be a big no for
Shana
me.
may not get in the 4-seater plane.
Yeah, it's all right. It's not for everybody.
Sometimes she's a little reluctant on the 160 person plane. So
Yeah.
well, it's been a fun day visiting with you, Jay B Sauceda, with the TCR, the new host of Texas Country Reporter. We're glad that you're with us today, and we look forward to your new episodes and the next book that you may be writing as well. We think you probably have a few more in you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate all the gas that goes in that car and helps us get around the state. It certainly helps us cover all the miles of Texas, and we've got a lot of them to keep going. So thanks to everybody out there doing that hard work and getting it done.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, JB, and stay with us. We'll be back with more.
This episode of TXOGA Talks is brought to you by Devon Energy, Repsol, and Targa Resources. Well, welcome back. Todd, before we go, we've been talking a lot about road trips. I would be in trouble if I didn't mention that 96% of the products that we use every day are derived from oil and gas. So they're helping you on your road trip, from the shovels and the buckets that you take to the beach, to the makeup that you put on before your family photo shoots in that beautiful Texas scenery. All of it comes from, most of it comes from oil and gas.
Those things that you mentioned for sure, along with our shoes or hiking boots, if we're going through the Big Bend region or Palo Duro Canyon, our tires, our makeups, our medicines, rain jackets, sunglasses, sunscreen, bottles with sunscreen,
our AirPods and our little Kindle holders for those long road trips with your kids,
our tents on those camping, the propane stoves that you might use as a part of that, either on your back patio or out, camping in one of the great parks that we have in Texas.
I actually vividly remember growing up, my family always went on a road trip out to usually a national park.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we were cooking on a propane stove and some buffalo started to move through. I think we were in Yellowstone, and my parents said, well, it's time to pack up. And I just vividly remember that, the cooking stove, and then buffalo started moving through.
That's great. And Yellowstone is in North Texas State Park. Just so everyone needs to know.
Going.
Little north.
Little outside of the 1836 Texas map, right?
Just slightly. It doesn't matter where you're traveling this summer. Texas Oil and Gas goes with you, and we're glad to be a part of that. Energy really does fuel modern life, and we're glad to get to talk about that here on TXOGA Talks.
Absolutely. This has been a super fun episode. I'm glad we've gotten to go on a virtual kind of road trip here today.
We've covered a lot of territory, from museums to Texas Country Reporter, to traveling with your family this summer. So we're glad that you will hope that you will take us with you wherever you go. This has been another episode of TXOGA Talks, where energy meets insight.
The views expressed on this podcast are not intended and should not be construed to be the views of any particular TXOGA member or company. The purpose of this podcast is to engage in candid conversations about energy needs, energy security, and the future of energy.